used by the Nazis to code top-secret messages. The Enigma machine and the man who broke its code are the subject of a new movie. And right now, our story from Anthony Mason.
In 1939, as Nazi troops were invading Poland and threatening Europe, British intelligence secretly moved its code-breaking operation to this country estate about an hour outside of London. At Bletchley Park, the British covertly recruited a team of the country's top cryptographers to try to crack the Germans' enigma code. Among them, a young mathematician named Alan Turing.
If the Allies broke enigma, well, it would turn into a very short war indeed.
In the new film, The Imitation Game, out next month, Benedict Cumberbatch plays the mathematics prodigy who would change the course of the Second World War.
How old are you, Mr. Turing?
27.
And how old were you when you became a fellow at Cambridge?
24.
And how old were you when you published this paper that has a title I can barely understand?
23.
And you don't think that qualifies you as a certified prodigy?
Well, Newton discovered binomial theorem age 22. Einstein wrote 4 papers that changed the world by the age of 26. As far as I can tell, I've barely made par.
That must be sort of intimidating to try to have to put all of that on the screen.
Hell yeah, it is.
To understand Turing's work, Cumberbatch familiarized himself with the Germans' encryption device, called the Enigma machine, on display at London's Imperial War Museum.
This is what Alan Turing was warring against.
This is exactly it. This is the enemy, the crooked hand of death, as it's called in the film.
Mm-hmm. Turing viewed this as kind of a mathematical problem, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he really did. But he also understood that to beat a machine, you had to use a machine rather than humans, because there just wasn't enough time. I like solving problems, Commander. And Enigma is the most difficult problem in the world.
No, enigma isn't difficult, it's impossible. The Americans, the Russians, the French, the Germans, everyone thinks enigma is unbreakable.
Good. Let me try, and we'll know for sure, won't we?
What was happening here was top secret.
Absolutely top secret. And in fact, everybody who worked here kept the secret for 30 years after the war.
At Bletchley Park, archivist Victoria Warpole says the code-breaking operation was headquartered in Hut 8.
And this is where Alan Turing had his office.
Turing and his team work with captured German machines. The Nazis set their codes on the Enigma's alphabetic keyboard.
And each time you press it, the light lights up and tells you what to write down as your ciphered text.
The code was reset every day, so the cryptographers had only 24 hours to crack it. The odds, 1 in 159 million.
This was Turing's concept?
Turing came up with the concept originally, yes.
He conceived a massive machine that would mathematically eliminate potential codes. Engineer Tony Jarvis.
You've got a column of 3 vertical. The drums actually replicate one Enigma machine.
Right.
And so you've got actually 36 Enigmas all looking for an answer.
This machine still works?
It does. It's the only working one in the world. You want to see it running?
I'd love to see it running.
Absolutely.
It took 9 months for Turing and his team to design and build a prototype.
That moment in the film actually gave me goosebumps to think what that must have been like the first time it worked and then stopped to give the settings for the day. I mean, it just has literally stood on the back of my neck, as it must have been for them. I mean, that is a eureka moment.
Cracking the cipher allowed British intelligence to decode messages to German U-boats that had preyed on Allied shipping. It's estimated Turing's work shortened the war by 2 years, saving millions of lives.
I mean, when you think about what he was doing back in the 1940s, how remarkable was it? Stunning.
Jim Hendler, professor of computer science at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, has taught a course on Turing.
He revolutionized cryptography,
the modern field of computer science, the subfield of artificial intelligence, a lot of the math of those things goes right back to Turing.
And he did it all essentially in anonymity.
He did it very much in anonymity because during the wartime he was working under secrecy.
Was the family at all aware of what he was doing here?
For the first part of the war, the family didn't know even where he was based.
Sir John Dermot Turing is Alan Turing's nephew.
All those things were completely unknown until the mid-70s.
Even you didn't know what he'd been doing?
No, we crowded around this small black and white TV set that we had at home in the 70s to find out when the BBC put out a little program on it. That's how we found out.
But by then, the man who created the blueprint for the modern computer had already taken his own life. After the war, Turing had become a world-class marathon runner. He moved to the University of Manchester to do research. But in January 1952, he was arrested and charged with gross indecency for having sexual relations with another man.
However, I mean, when he was prosecuted, then he was not in denial about it. He wasn't.
He didn't try to hide it.
He didn't try to hide it at all.
Turing was sentenced to probation and required to undergo estrogen treatments, then believed to suppress homosexual desires.
I say it could have been worse, but I still think what happened to him was pretty awful.
In 1954, Turing died after eating an apple dipped in cyanide. He was 41. It would take nearly 60 years for his reputation to be fully rehabilitated. Only last year, he was finally pardoned by Queen Elizabeth. Today at Bletchley Park, now a museum, Alan Turing is celebrated for what he was, a war hero, with a story like something out of a movie.
I'm designing a machine that will allow us to break every message, every day, instantly.
It was an epic life.
A really epic life. A too short epic life, 41 years of it. We owed him at least double that, I'd say.